What's up, everybody? This is Jeremy. Welcome to Gate. Thank you so much for joining. Today, we're going to be talking about string functions, but before we do, espresso today, yes, a little bit of a variable. I wanted to thank you guys so much for the ones who have subscribed. We're up to 50 subscribers as of today, which is 11 January. That is awesome. Thank you so much. And before we get started, I need your help. I need you to go to the comments and say, what are you looking for from this channel? Do you like the shorter clips where we go over some certain functions? Do you like the custom coding tools that I can give you? Or do you want to see a beginning to end full database build where we go from start to finish, from planning all the way to building out the tables, building out the code, building out the forms? What exactly do you want to see? Put your comments down below. That helps me so much kind of really give you guys what you need for this channel. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so here we are. I've built a custom form in Access, and the easiest way to do this is just to walk through these various functions, and you can see the results up here in this result window. So here's the string we're going to be talking about most of the time. Right here I have place markers. You'll notice right off the bat that spaces within the string are counted, as well as some on the front and the end. So let's get started. So the first function, notice I'm also saying function, which means it's going to return something. And that is the case for every one of these. So the first function is length string, or len string. So when you hit that, all that does is you give that a string, and so we're giving it this, and it's going to show you how long that string is. You'll note if we do this, this is 29 characters, which if this is 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, boom. Too easy. The next one is trim. Now what this does is this takes leading and trailing spaces off of whatever string it's given. So for instance, if I say this has spaces and I do this and then I hit trim, it's going to remove those spaces. That is really important, especially if you're looking at Excel or you're taking input from a user. You know, for instance, if you say, hey, type in your first name and they accidentally hit a space, so you can get rid of those spaces. So trim is how you do that. The next one is left, which is going to give you the left part of a string, and it has a variable length. So for instance, this is the string we're talking about. If I want the first 5 characters, I can put that in there and it would do that. Now in the code, it would look something like this: left s title, and that's pretty much it. I put 8 characters up to the max, which is 29 characters. So that's how left works. Now this may seem easy, but you have to remember you can combine these things. The next one is right, which starts from the right and does the same thing. So if I do right 4, it's going to give me ever. If I do right 5, remember it's going to give me spaces as well. Now see that? It gave me that space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can hit trim to trim that up. Now mid, this is where things get interesting. Mid is how you can extract things. So mid has possibly three parameters: the string you're looking at, which is this, where you want to start in the mid, and the length, which is optional. That's why it's in brackets. So for instance, if we're looking at this string and we want to start at position 10, but I don't put a length in, then it's going to return from 10 all the way to the end of the string. If I put a length in, I can tell it how many exactly I want. So I want 6 characters starting at 10. Now that includes 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It should return access, and it does. The next one is in string. Now notice that start is optional. I always use 1, but you don't have to. So you can kind of use this as a Boolean, although it returns a long. So what this means is if something you're looking for is in the string, it's going to return something greater than 0. It's going to return the start position. If not, it's going to return 0. So for instance, let's do an in string of this, and we want to know, where does tut start? If we're looking for tut within this string, so in string start at position 1, string 1 is this, string 2 is this, 17. So TUT starts at 17. 15, remember, spaces are counted. 16, 17. There we go. So we know if we did an in string for TUT and it was greater than 0, then we know that is in that string somewhere. In string reverse is just that same thing, but it starts from the right side. It starts from the end of the string and goes backwards. We're going to look for the letter V, 27. Now, even though it's starting from the right, it's going to give you the position from the normal position. So 25, 26, 27, at position 27 is the V starting from the end of the string. So that is really easy to confuse. You have to be sure you don't mess that up because it's very easy. You would think it's 1, 2, 3 because you started from the right, and what position? No, you're starting from the right, but it's going to give you the absolute position. And then finally, we have replace. Now, this one's very useful for lots of things. And the important thing to remember is you can nest these together, and you'll see some of that next. Now, replace, what it lets you do is find stuff in a string and then replace it. Now, you can replace it with all sorts of things, another word, another letter, a double quote, which is nothing. So replace is string. So what string you're looking at, what are you looking for, and what do you replace that find with? And then you can optionally do a start and a count, but start acts a little weird. So let's try this out. So we're going to replace string. Let's look for the letters C and replace them with at signs. So we're going to find the letter C, one C, and replace them with an at. And if we do that, that is the result. Fair enough. Now, you would think that if you put in an optional start, it would start here and go forward and then give you this whole string, but not really. Start kind of trims the string, which is unfortunate, but that's how it works. So for instance, if we start at letter 10 with this same replace, it's actually going to cut off the beginning of that string. And so it starts at 10, does the replace, and then there we have it. Now, let's reset this. What if we're finding the letter A and we're going to replace it with an exclamation mark, and we're only going to do this one time? Now, what will it give you? It gives you this. It does that replacement for A once, and then it doesn't touch any other A. Now, you also have to know that this is cap sensitive when you're replacing, so it's going to give you a literal string. So if we replace lowercase a with uppercase A, it's going to do uppercase A on all this good stuff. Pretty easy to use, but it can get very complex when you start parsing things. So here's some examples where we do some cool stuff. So let's say this is an example. Again, replace is very useful. So if you wanted to get rid of the word access here, now notice this is what is running in code. I'm replacing this string. I'm looking for access with a space, because if I don't put that space at the end, I'm going to have greatest space tutorial ever. So I put that space at the end, and then I replace it with just double quotes, just nothing. So when we do that, greatest tutorial ever is what the result is. And again, if I wanted to just get rid of a single letter, I would just do the letter. I don't need the space unless I'm absolutely looking for the space, and then double quotes. And that's what you have. Now you can use these in some code and different functions to be able to parse out words. So let's say, for instance, I was passed a variable and I wanted to extract the second word from that string, but I don't know what the string is. I'm going to look for a second word. So here's some pseudocode. This is kind of what's running in the background. There are some checks involved in this. We've got a variable x1, x2, and then a variable xdiff. So here's what I do. I say, okay, this is kind of like my left marker, and this is my right marker as I parse through the sentence. So my left marker, I want to put it in string. I'm going to start at 1, the title or the variable, which is this. And then I'm looking for this first space in that string, and then I'm going to bump it +1, right? So if I were to do that, it should be at position 9, and then I'm going to bump it +1 to 10. So x1 should be at position 10. Now that I've got x1, which is position 10, I can set another variable, x2 equals end string, starting at my first cursor. So now we're starting here, and I'm still analyzing this title. So starting at position 10, I'm looking for another space. And if I find a space, I know that there's at least a third word. If I don't find a space, I know we're at the end of this string. So x2 should find position 16. Now I'll take the difference. 16 minus 10 is 6. So therefore, the result, to get that second word, I'm going to do a mid. I'm going to do the title, mid. I'm going to start at 10, and then I'm going to go 6 positions, including 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if I hit this, that's exactly the results it gives me. x1 equals 10 because I found the first space and then I bumped it +1. x2, I started x1 and I'm looking for another space. And again, there's some ifs in the code to where you want to, if you don't find this, if x2 equals 0, then you know you're at the end already. And so you can just do a mid x1 and you don't need the diff, because remember, this is optional in the mid. Now, where does this come into play when you talk about queries? So where does this come into play when we're talking with queries? Well, let's say, for instance, you've linked an Excel file in your database. Now, Excel is notorious for having leading and trailing spaces. Now in Access, if you're typing stuff into a table, it will automatically trim the trailing spaces from a string, but it will not trim the leading spaces. Well, in Excel, you can have leading and trailing spaces, and so that can really mess up your stuff. So we can actually use these string functions within a query to help clean up the data, and then that way we know our functions are going to run smoother. Back in our Access database, let's say we have linked this fake spreadsheet here, and we want to start import this into the database. First, we need to know how clean this data is. So we make a query. So in this query, I'm looking at sheet 1. Now notice what I've done here. First, I bring in that column F1. I say that's the original is F1. And then next in that query, let me zoom in here. I'd say the original length of F1 is length F1. So len is the field. Now I do the trimmed length, which I just do notice how these are nested. First I trim F1 and then I enclose that in a length function. And then I want to know the delta or the difference. Then I can say, what is the delta? Well, I take the original length, which I know has to be equal or maybe longer, minus trim length, which is this field here. And when I run that query, these are the results I get. So the original length of the string is 14, the trimmed is 3. That means I have 3 spaces hiding in here. So there was one leading space here, and there's actually 2 spaces here that are really hard to detect. And again, if you're typing something native into Access, it will not let you, under normal circumstances, give you a trailing space. However, if you import or you link in Excel, it will maintain those trailing spaces. And a lot of times it's hard to pick up. This one, we had nothing. This was a clean string. And this one here, we also had 3. Sometimes it's hard to tell with these eyes. Okay, we had one leading space and 2 trailing spaces here, so the delta's 3. So when you're importing these, when you run your SQL, you're going to want to import the trim of the. To do that, you would just do trimmed field, for instance. Let's zoom in here so we can see this a bit better. We would just do trim F1. And so this is what we would want to grab from our query, is this guy over here. These are very clean and nice strings. They're not messy things. And again, trim does not get rid of the spaces in the middle. It only gets rid of the leading and trailing spaces. And so yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for joining, and have a great day.